Hello everybody and welcome to Cause and Effect, a show about VTS. This time, can't really remember the episode number anymore, somewhere in season 2. And this is the second part
I think
of that
6.
episode. It's episode. Okay, this is the second part of episode 6. Thank you, Adam. And today we are talking about recursion. And why to do it and how to do it and why not. So, in the first part we talked a lot about more at a broad point of view, and now we're going down to some serious business. But if you have missed the first part, as always, suggest that you watch that one first. But now we are getting dirty. So, we should probably bring up the first deck.
Yes.
Yes. And Isaac.
Oh, I have the wrong deck up, sorry.
Yeah, should I introduce it?
Yeah, please do.
This is a project of mine, and this particular instance is also built by Mikael Holmström, another Swede. So this is an Ashur Tablet Liquidation deck based around the 4/5 crypt for Kaisid, with Isanbayan as the master phase person, or however you want to put it.
Yeah.
So, as we spoke about in the previous part, this is the basic idea of the Ashur Tablet Liquidation concept. It's a stealth bleed deck, and the idea is to liquidate and then Ashur Tablet whatever you need the most for that particular prey, or upcoming 2 preys, or something like that.
Okay. So, first, before we go on, Isavayan has a huge disadvantage. She gets tapped when she or he uses his extra master phase. How do you work around that?
As long as it's possible, you try to avoid tapping him, her, it. I don't know. But sometimes it's more efficient to take an additional master phase action rather than an additional minion phase action. And this is more true the longer the game goes on. So the first few turns you really don't want to tap Isanbayan. Because then you need to do govern down and those kinds of things. But in the end game, when you have 5 or 6 dominate minions, it's only 1/6 or 1/5 of all your actions. So then it's not as big of a loss.
And you play with Parthenon as well.
Yeah. That's very true.
So, okay, I think you kind of explained it, but why play recursion in this deck? I mean, if you look through the winning deck archive, there's a lot of more just straightforward Kaisid bleeders.
Should I take it?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Adam.
Well, here we have a few of the cards we talked about that are good in limited numbers, but that you can recur and get back later on. The most notable one, in my opinion, is Song of Pan, which is incredibly powerful whenever you're going for the oust, and to be able to do that 3 times is really strong. And also Nocturne. I think personally this is really huge part of it. 3 Nocturnes, they can easily, if you want to, become, say, 10 Nocturnes or 12 Nocturnes during a game. No, sorry. 3. No, they can't. It's impossible. I thought about 9 Ashur Tablets. Okay, say you can have 6 to 9 Nocturnes during a game. And unless they're stealth rushing, that's 9 possible rushes you can block.
Yeah.
And that's like a huge part. And of course, it's not a huge commitment. There are actually not 6 or 9 in the deck. There's only 3. So that's, I think, is a huge part. But other than that, it's just the thing that Isaac talked about earlier. Stealth and bleed together. To be able to choose how much stealth and how much bleed you have is really powerful.
Yeah. Okay, so it's just to be able to, it depends on the game then what you take to your hand or shuffle into your deck, or is there's always some, this is the card I always want to have on my hand or my deck, in my deck, Isak?
Always is very, it's very deterministic, or what not, how to put it. But one card that is more important in this deck than if you compare it to Girls Will Find in the Peace or Geezers Will Find in the Peace or those kinds of deck is that you more often try to go for Parthenon. When you play Girls, you just all of a sudden end up with Parthenon in your hand and you play it and you just go along. But in this deck, you kind of want it because going from 1 to 2 Master Phase actions is very a bigger leap than going from 2 to 3, and because you really don't want to tap SNY and you rather just bleed with him or do Govern Down or stay untapped and deflect, getting the Parthenon is kind of neat. So because the basic bleed concept is very, very basic. It's just govern conditioning and stuff. As basic as it gets. So there's no one card that's like, I really need this a lot, often. Adam touched this with Song of Palm, it can work like that, but you might want to put some Master in your hand with Ashur Tablets more often with this deck.
Okay. Yeah, so Adam, is there any specific order that you play the Masters?
Of course you need to play Liquidation first, since you need to have cards in your Ash heap to be able to recur them with Ashur Tablets. So you want to play Liquidation before you play the third Ashur Tablet. But there's a lot of, like, I'm not sure how to explain it in a good way, but there's a lot of Masters that you can play which are non-committal. Say, Dreams is a card that is a commitment, in my opinion. You play it out, it costs a pool, you play it, and you want to use it as soon as possible to avoid the risk of contesting. So when you play Dreams, you want to use it. But Liquidation, for instance, is like the epitome of non-committal card. You get the benefit of the cards in the Ash heap, and they're waiting for you to use them in the Ash heap, and you get 3 pool immediately. So you can, from the start playing Masters that are good for you later on in the game, but don't require you to act with them immediately.
Okay.
So, and this, of course, a lot of them are also playable before you're actually getting any minions out. It doesn't require, say, Villain requires you to have a minion out, or in this case, Great Symposium requires you to have a minion out. But lots of these Masters you can just play all the time.
Yeah, I mean...
So these first 2 or 3 Master Phase actions that you get before you get your first minion, you might actually end up using them most of the game for something. Say an Honor Maker or an Ashur Tablet or Jake Washington or Liquidation or some such. And that's also very good with playing an Ashur Tablet Liquidation combo, that you use those Master Phase actions that usually ends up being unused.
Yeah.
But I would say before you get the partner with a deck like this, most of the time you want to play 3 of Liquidation or Ashur Tablets, your first 3 Master Phase action, if that's at all possible. Say 2 Liquidation, 1 Ashur Tablet, or 2 Ashur Tablets and 1 Liquidation. And like this, you normally have the opportunity to do, as me and Isaac talked concerning this. And then you're starting like doing things that are actively strengthening your position, like Govern Down or Pentex wherever you may, or transferring with Dreams, what have you.
Okay. Well, Girls works in the same way as this deck. Why does that deck see so much more play than this deck, Isak?
Because it works better. The crypt is not as uncomfortable, because this crypt is kind of uncomfortable. You want to bring up an 8-cup first to do Govern Down, to get a chain. the chain of governs, but at the same time you want to bring us out Isanemayan first because you want that extra master phase action. So there's a contradiction. The other ones being you have Isanemayan and you have to choose either act or additional master phase actions, and you don't have that choice with girls. And thirdly, it's Axinia. She helps you cycle masters also, because essentially she's like on a good turn you get to waste or play or use or discard an additional 3 master cards, or at least you will have to you're able to waste 1 master card out of turn. So it helps you to cycle the deck faster.
Something that also contributes to hand jamming in this deck is that you, to a greater extent, use bleed modifiers and bleed actions that you don't use in girls. Governors and conditionings, of course they're really good, but you rely on them to oust in this deck. With girls you only need the stealth. The plus speed you draw is an added benefit, but it's not a huge part of the deck in this way. So you have less possibility to cycle and play masters, and you have more cards that are your ousting strategy. So it makes it a lot harder to play. That's a huge part.
Another deck that I think is it's compatible, which also uses the original Ashur Tablet and Liquidation, is the Nanabruko Animalism deck.
Yes.
Adam.
Well, that one is quite simple in its how you play it. Ashur Tablet Liquidation is, well, it gives you that longevity I talked about, but other than that you just mix in whichever cards you need. It doesn't matter that much which combat cards it is, you just an even amount of all cards and then you just continue rushing.
It's just to get longevity to the transient combat cards, really, and some bloat which that deck need because it doesn't have any defense mechanisms other than rushing.
Absolutely.
Yes, that's exactly those 2 parts. So.
Yeah, 1 Majesty can kill you if you don't have bloat with a rush deck. That doesn't include grapple. So yeah, that's a big thing I think to have liquidation, special liquidation in.
That deck. Yeah. Oh, I know. There's there's a lot of different takes on the traditional Ashur Tablet Liquidation. This is just one of them. I think we have talked ourselves to death about it.
Yes.
Okay. So let's see something else then. We have Giovanni Shambler with Liquidation Sudario.
Yes.
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 Trying to bring it up. Okay, I think we got it now.
Okay. Adam, do you want to bring us in?
Right, yeah. So deck played by Olivier Perez during this Paris ECU 2006. This deck does not have Ashur Tablet at all. This is you exchange the Ashur Tablets in this deck for another recursion card, which is Sudario Refraction.
Okay.
You still have the liquidations, of course, but the Sudario Refraction is another way to use liquidation. Use the cards in that sheet.
What are the benefits when using Sudario compared to Ashur Tablet? Adam.
It's a more immediate gain. Sudario gets you 3 cards to your hand, and Ashur Tablets only get you 1 card to your hand. Okay. So, and also, Sudario Refraction, if you play it on Sudario Refraction, you can get lots of cards during the same turn. Ashur Tablets is actually not possible to do more than 1 each turn. Oh, maybe if you play the 3rd one and then 3 additional. It's a stretch anyway. With Sudario Refraction you can recur as many times as you like. Okay. So that's like... yeah.
Isak, why not play both?
Sudario and Ashur Tablet?
Yeah.
I don't know the English expression, but it's it's more of the same.
It's redundant.
Yeah, because it's more of the same. And generally I don't think that's too strong. And if you look at the amount of monsters, I actually tried once to build a deck list with a more or less a traditional Shambling Hordes deck with Ashur Tablets, and it ended up being very uncomfortable and not good. It's not needed. You liquidate to gain pool and gain Shambling Hordes in the Ash Heap. You play your Shambling Hordes, and when it's time to oust, you play Sudari Refraction for some lead cards, and you read your prey. It sounds very simple, and like the playing Sudari and bleeding your prey part is kind of simple. Rushing with Shambling Hordes is a bit trickier, but that's besides the point. Anyways, like the biggest part for me with Sudari Refraction is that you can pick bleed and be certain to have that bleed and bleed out, instead of hoping to draw into a certain. So you start off by emptying your hand of bleed. Then one of your guys, preferably someone without dominate, plays a Sudari Refraction for some more bleed, and the rest of your dominate guys bleeds again.
Yeah, it's kind of neat.
Very.
And also, what Isaac talked about very quickly in this deck is that liquidation has the double benefit of putting allies in your Ash Heap for Shambling Hordes.
Yeah.
So
Cannot stress that enough.
yeah, it's a huge part why this deck is so successful. The different parts are strong separately, but they also like have good synergy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see that this deck carries Forge Kit Library and Antelios. It's probably Forge Kit for Antelios, or
Most probably.
okay. So how do you think about that, Isaac? I mean, wouldn't it be better to just use 2 Anthelios in the deck, or when is it worth playing a Forge Kit Library?
I'd say if you have multiple Gehenna cards. Other than that, I'm not a big a fan of playing Fortune. Instead of just costing a discard phase action to play, say, Amphiros, it costs a master phase action and discard phase action. And it can be sudden or some such. It's a lot more common with sudden reversals than it is with not to be. So, I'd prefer not playing Fortune, but not in this deck. I agree with Fortune, but generally speaking, I wouldn't choose Fortune.
It's when you have 2 different Gehenna cards that you both want out eventually. If you draw them in the wrong order, the Fortune can choose either. So in a way, this deck actually has 2 Anthelioses and 4 Unmasking for the purpose of how fast you can draw both or get both of those Gehenna cards. So that's the strength.
Yeah. But I mean, if you have already drawn Antelios, you can use the Forge Kit library to change up something else. Isn't that a reason to play it?
It's really, really expensive to use Anthelios, actually. It's probably the worst recursion in the game. Maybe Summon Soul is worse, but it's really, really bad as far as recursion goes, because it's so expensive. 1 master card and a master phase action. It's good to have the option, of course. And if you want to exchange something for another Pentex version, Fortune is a better card to change it with than some good card, but normally a good card is better
Than a bad card.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't agree with Adam being so harsh on Anthelios. I think Anthelios is very, very, very strong indeed.
Yeah, it's good with recursion. Recursion is incredibly strong, but I think that's really bad recursion as far as recursion goes.
I don't agree, because master cards are so strong, and it's very cumbersome for the other players to counter played master cards.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's you always have to think about it, but if you have multiple master phases of one reason or another, it's almost always worth it to play Antelios, even if you don't play Ashur Tablets or Liquidation or so.
Yeah.
That's what I think.
I agree. It's incredibly powerful to cycle up Pentex Subversion, for instance, and play it over and over again.
You guys are talking so much about Pentex Subversion.
Well, I think that's the biggest use of it. All the other cards I would want to put back in with Sudari Refraction.
Yeah, you might want to play Misdirection.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's very similar, or Blind Spot. Those cards that deny bounces or blocks in one way or another is the ones you want to abuse.
Yeah, and that's why you want multiple master phases, like when you play bleed deck for the tapping effect.
Yes.
It's awesome. And sometimes you get double misdirected.
Yes, sometimes you do. Another thing that is worth mentioning about the Sudari Refraction is the ability to always have defense on your hand. In this particular deck, there's no deflection. I guess that's a metagame choice, but if you have deflections, you can, and the lane tactics for that in that case, you can loop them. So you play Sudario on one Sudario and whatever defense you need, deflections and or delaying tactics. And that way you can have a permanent 2 delayings or permanent 2 deflections each turn, which is so strong that it's really ridiculous. Like trying to oust a prey that always have 2 deflections every single turn. It's worse than Xenia, and we all know how problematic that is.
Which also brings us to a big drawback of Sudario, is that it's an action with 1 stealth. Blocking it can be really, really good, or bad for the player trying to refract. So that's like, if you want to have tips on how to oust them, block Sudario Refraction, try to make sure that they can't do the Sudario Refraction loop, where you play Sudario Refraction on another, keep them always on your hand.
Yeah.
Because when that player has 5-star Sudario Refraction in his Ash Heap, he can't recur anymore. That's over. That's really, really strong.
Yeah, and of course, the big advantage is that you have you're more able to choose and can do it loads of more times, because it is an action.
Yeah, that's it is.
That is good advantage.
Yeah. So, anything more about this Sudario liquidation?
An obvious drawback here, as we mentioned earlier, is there is no like vampire with additional master phase action. You solely rely on Parthenon, and that can be very dangerous. Because if this deck ends up with a contest with a girls deck, they probably will lose because they can't keep up with girls bloating because they have a base of 2 master phase actions rather than the one of the Giovanni deck. So you rely a lot on Parthenon, but you really can't contest it. So it's another way to shaft a Shambling Horse deck is to contest Parthenon if they play with a master module.
Yeah.
Like
you don't have to do that though. Since you don't have Ashur Tablets, you're saving say 6 to 9 master phase actions there. I think if I would build a deck like this, I would probably not include Parthenon for the reasons Isaac just stated.
Okay. Well then, should we move on to our last example?
Yes, I think so.
Okay.
And this is the most exciting one, I think.
Well then, Mr. Excitable, why don't you tell us a little bit about this deck then?
This is a deck played by Erik Torstensson, and it is very innovative in one specific way. This is a AAA deck that rushes with guns, but the biggest point here being Infernal Pursuit. So it's Infernal Pursuit Ashur Tablets rather than the classic Ashur Tablet Liquidation. So this deck brings out Anson and rushes someone, and in that first combat you play so many Infernal Pursuits so you can cycle your hand until you have the perfect hand. So you can get a Magnum and probably some Crypt Acceleration, a Villain on your hand, Giant's Blood, maybe a Pentex, so some such, maybe some defensive cards like Second Tradition, something like that. So you could, in the first combat, theoretically there's not an issue at all to cycle maybe 30 or even 40 cards down to your Ash Heap. And in this way gain the perfect hand and being able to almost guarantee to be the one that gets to play Villain Giant's Blood.
Yeah, and that's obviously because every card takes the detour around your hand before going into the Ash Heap.
Yeah, that's very important that you brought it up, because that's different with playing Infernal Pursuit rather than liquidation.
Yeah.
You choose which cards you get to choose. You get to have, or which cards you throw away.
Yeah.
Which also makes it harder to play in a way, because you have so much more responsibility to make the right choices. It can really come back to bite you. You can't blame bad luck if you discarded that one Ashur tablet that you needed.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, Adam, do you have anything like more to say about this deck?
This is like an extreme of what we talked about in part 1, where the 12 cards that you add to your library having a big effect on the deck because of how low the deck size is. So when you're doing the first Ashur tablets, I'm imagining you'll add all the rushes and all the seconds, and then maybe psychs or tastes, a few of them. And that will be like your entire library. Ideally, I think you're going down to say 12 cards or something, 10 to 20 cards during the first combat. If you have that option, you want to do that, and then Ashur tablets to make your deck really, really powerful, really slimmed, and exactly what you want in it. It's a really extreme version of how liquidation Ashur tablets work in that way.
But isn't it like really hard? How do you keep so many Ashur tablets? I mean, if you draw them, you have to keep them on your hand, or can you put them in your ash heap? Or
you only need to be able to play 3. The other 6 can essentially go to your ash heap if needed. If
someone plays Southern Reversal, then you're screwed.
You have Anthelios and other monsters, so you can bring them up to your hand again and try anew.
And this is also part of the hard to play thing, I think. Since maybe you want to be safe and have 4 Ashur tablets available to you, or maybe you want an extra on your hand, and that can either be really detrimental or be really important to get the Ashur tablets off. So it's really, really interesting. I don't think this has been explored enough.
Yeah. Are there any other cards than Infernal Pursuit that works in the same way?
Yes, there is one.
I'd say there is 2, but go ahead, pick yours.
Yeah, there's probably
Pick your
more.
poison.
I know 2 cards, but I'll talk about this one because it's come up recently. Relentless Pursuit. It's a combat card, presses, and if you get a new round, it's 2 extra hand size, and these are also stackable. So for every extra round, you get 2 extra hand size. So something akin to this could be done with Potence. And
Yeah.
And then play Nanabruk, of course.
Yeah, or Huitzilopochtli has Potence as well.
But please!
Just say, okay, Synosius has Potence.
Oh, that's too great. This card is obviously a lot worse than Infernal Pursuit because you need to get that extra round and it's delayed. The Infernal Pursuit is instant. You can do everything pre-range in the first combat, so there's more or less no chance at all for your opponent to actually end combat or some such before you getting to cycle your hand. This is much more circumstantial. So if you, for instance, by accident knock your opponent to torpor, you don't get to cycle any cards.
And there's also, if you want to discard more than 2 cards, you need to have him stay away from torpor for 2 rounds. You can only get 2 extra cards for each round, unless he presses against.
Yeah.
So you're limited to how many cards you can cycle. It's actually, in the same way that Infernal Pursuit is possible to empty your library, it's not possible with Relentless Pursuit to cycle 40 to 60 cards during a combat.
Yeah. Okay.
And I was thinking about dreams, actually.
Yeah.
And this can be done with... So instead of playing liquidation, you play absurd amounts of dreams. This was the deck I borrowed from Adam yesterday. You play 7 dreams and 60 cards, and that way you make sure to one part you have monopoly on dreams, or you're contesting it constantly. One of those two will happen. The other part being, if you actually are allowed to have the monopoly, actually having it play and using it, you'll be cycling a lot of cards. So you play this instead of the liquidation, and then you play Ashur Tablet to get the perfect library.
But this is like really, really vulnerable because every other deck has dreams in it, so you will mostly be contesting, right, Adam?
The reality is that, of course, you'll be contesting every single game. You will be contesting at some point. But the reality is that you don't need to do it every single turn. If you do it a few times before the Ashur Tablets, that's normally enough to make that first Ashur Tablet worthwhile. You can have 13 cards that are good to shuffle back in.
Okay. Going back to our Ashur Tablet Infernal Pursuit deck. We stated before the show that kind of have a slimming effect. What did you mean, Adam?
Yeah, that's what I talked about earlier. How you decrease the deck size to however you like. Say you reduce it to 20 cards and then you shuffle 12 cards back in, or in total it'll be 36 cards. So those 36 cards are of your choosing, and the other cards that you don't manage to remove from your library before then are not of your choosing. But it still will be a really, really slim deck, somewhere to around 50 to 70 cards. And 36 of those are really, really strong. That's the ones you choose.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, anything more, Isaac?
No. I think this, as we've touched on a bit, as far as Vitas goes, this strategy or this idea of recursion and deck building mid-game is kind of new. So there might even be some more cards. For me, it was really an eye-opener when I first saw this abuse of Infernal Pursuit together with Ashur Tablets. It was very, very cool. And probably should drop this. We posted a tournament finals in our channel. That actually was when this deck won. So if you want to see it in action, you can take a look at the video.
Yeah, disclaimer, it's in Swedish though.
Swinglish, I'd say.
Swinglish?
Swinglish.
Lots of the announcements are in English, like which cards we play and when we're bleeding and when we're hunting, but...
Yeah.
If you have that...
I actually saw it one day when I didn't have something to do, and it was really a good final, fun to watch, actually, especially in the beginning. Okay, so that's about it for that deck, I think. So you had some kind of wild ideas that you wanted to talk about before the show, Isaac. What were you thinking of?
I have mind blank. I don't remember. Did I tell you guys?
Might be Adam then?
Yeah, I talked about how Nicomedes and Heart-Initiatus could be considered recursion. Which is something I talked about earlier on the show, I think. But so I can go through it a bit quickly.
Yeah.
Nicomedes, you can shuffle your hand back into your library, and Heart-Initiatus, of course, draw 3 cards and put 3 back in the bottom of your library. Most normally, when you see a card during normal play, you will have to discard that card or play it. It's one of those choices. The strength of recursion is that you can not play a card and still have the benefit of it later on. And in this, Nicomedes and Heart-Initiatus are both similar. You will be able to use those cards later on. It's not a permanent choice to put cards away with these two abilities. So they have some of the strengths of recursion, that you're delaying cards. You can add cards that are useful or a specific timing in the game, like you want to use it in the end. You don't have to discard those cards or play it at an inopportune time with Heart-Initiatus or Nicomedes.
It's still a prayer though.
Well, they're really good. Most of them.
Yeah, of course. It's hard.
It's just a
hard-
little thought I had. Not sure if it helps anyone.
Yeah, if you're very broad in your definition, you might call this recursion, but I think it's a bit of a stretch. But that what you say makes sense. That it's very good to have the ability to delay cards.
Yeah.
I had another idea for recursion. That is actual recursion.
Ah.
Sargon fragment is
Right.
probably worth mentioning, and the Unity as well. So we can start off with Sargon fragment. That is the equipment that gives you superior necromancy. That is probably not why you picked this card. I hope. The biggest part being that you can move a library card to a sheep to a hand as an action that costs 1 blood.
Yeah.
And
of
I've
course-
seen this used with 2 different instances. One of them is AAA, because the biggest problem with this card being that you have 0 stealth. So you circumvent that with Tordo Grand Ball, and that way you can. But this card gets even more absurd than Ashur Tablets, because, for instance, you can have a banishment and use that banishment every single turn for the rest of your life. More or less. It's at the cost of 1 blood. It's very cheap.
Yeah.
So
And the other deck is
is one that won a Gothenburg tournament a few months ago, played by Stefan Karlsson, where you use Gerald Winham for sort of freak showish, and you have the Sargon fragment, and you only play a few bleed cards. But since the deck is kind of freak show-ish, you have the extra actions to actually bring the conditioning to your hand, and then go bleed, and then play it, and then do that every turn. In that way, you can fill your library with other stuff than besides the bleed that you need.
also, I think this is played in some iterations of the Una deck. Or Una.
Yeah. It should be.
Yeah. You can say get Sudari, Sudden Reversal or Pentex back to your hand with the Una deck.
Yeah.
And Unity. I haven't actually read this card ever, I think.
It's an imbued card to put 2 imbued, cards that require imbued to your ash heap, and then you may shuffle, and may cut the library, and the may means, of course, that you can just leave them on the top of your library, which is what you normally do.
Yes.
But this is a bit on the cost this side.
Yeah.
Because it's not cool to do this.
Yeah.
But couldn't you say, if we talked about Sargon Fragment and Unity, I forgot to name the vampire that can vote up 2 cards to your hands?
Andida. Yeah. It's great.
He is,
Yeah, we talked about him before, or her.
It's incredibly
Yes.
powerful. He only has 2 cards, and it's only minion cards, so he's kind of limited as well. But the big benefit is that you can get voting captivations and force marsh from that referendum to him and use it immediately. So it kind of weighs up that disadvantage a bit.
Yeah.
And,
Any other?
Yes, the chat actually proposes waste management operation. I think that's a viable choice. It's similar, or it's a bit. What I don't like about it is that it only puts the 1 card from your ash heap on the bottom of your library. But if you can find a way to shuffle your library, I think base management operation gets a lot better.
Yeah. Well, okay. Well, there's probably a lot of different things you can do. There's a lot of cards in the game.
Yes,
But,
that's very true.
yeah. Well, any parting words then? Words of wisdom, Isaac?
No, I don't think I have any words of wisdom, but I'd love to get some input. If you have any other way of playing recursion decks that doesn't involve either Ashur Tablet or Liquidation or both, because they are very, very expensive cards. So it'd be lovely to see if you can do any sort of abuse without them.
Okay. Adam?
I don't think any of us proposes that we know how recursion works, and this is one of the interesting parts. This is where you can actually help push the envelope of betas to start exploring how recursion works, because it's really, really confusing. Try it out and try to understand it. It'll take a long time and it'll be hard, and it's really, really fun to explore this part of betas that is really, really complex.
Yeah. Okay, well, then before we do our usual goodbye announcement, we have another announcement. Isak, you can tell us a little bit more about our bragging rights.
Yeah, we have some bragging rights, courtesy of Lunka, as Janne Lundqvist, the Finnish national coordinator. Sometime during the first season, we had a deck clinic, our first deck clinic. We remoduled one of his decks based around Paul Cordwood, and we proposed a new deck list. He took the deck list. I'm not sure if it was totally unchanged, but very, very similar at least. Played a tournament in Helsinki, Finland, and won.
Yeah.
So that is our bragging rights, and Lunka's bragging rights as well. It's on the Weekend forums, the report, if you want to check it out.
And of course, we'd love it if the last deck that we had a clinic, we would love to see how it went.
Yeah. Some following up if you played a tournament with a deck, or if you didn't, and why, and etc. That'd be great.
Yeah, that's about it, our show. So, yeah, okay, that's it for this time. Thanks everyone for watching, and remember, if you have any thoughts, comments, or ideas, you can post them on our Facebook page, or send an email to the address below, causeampersandeffect@gmail.com. And remember to like us on Facebook and subscribe to our YouTube channel. After the show, we will post a thread on the weekend.net forum where you can continue the discussion. So, thanks a lot everyone for watching, and have a good night. Say good night, bitches.
Good night.
Good night.